Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanmo TV, and welcome to this Hapanmo TV watch party for the Age of Disclosure. It's behind me. Hey, it's behind you, Ben. It's almost panto season. Yeah. This is the watch party for the Age of Disclosure. This is the second of the three-part series of this watch party, and that is the review section. As you know, if you watch regularly, my watch parties, or indeed read parties for books, are split into three sections: the introduction, the review, and the live stream. The introduction, where I introduce it, hence the title. Then there's the review, where I review it personally through a monologue, or in this case, a dialogue, because I've got Steve Bassett coming up in a minute. And then finally, the live stream, where I discuss it with you live on the channel, the audience, my viewers. And this is where I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of it. And then what's happening then, we're going to bring on Steve Bassett. I've got to record an interview with him, which is very, very interesting, where we talk about this film. And then finally, we'll see what the critics have to say. The Age of Disclosure is available on several streaming platforms. It's actually pretty expensive. I was quite surprised when I saw how much it was going to be. There was rumors it was going to be quite pricey. It's more than I thought. Your average movie on like Amazon Prime is probably usually about £2 to £4 to rent, £7 to £8 to buy. This one is £14.49 to rent and £18.50 to buy. That's extraordinarily expensive. The reason for that is, I'm guessing it's to do with some kind of financial problem they have. And indeed, Steve and I are going to discuss that. It just come up. I've recorded this interview in advance, you'll probably guess. But yeah, this is how I kind of like, I'm guessing there's some kind of financial problem. They need to recoup a lot of money, something like that. My guess is that that price will come down over time. But when you look at the actual ratio, I mean, if you're going to go and watch it, I advise just buying it, because if you look at the ratio between rental and, despite its high price, the ratio between the rental and purchase price is actually really small. I mean, it's literally an extra £4, and you can just buy it. And so why not just buy it? I mean, if you buy it, so you can watch it over and over again. If you rent it, you only got 2 days to watch it, and then that's it. Then it's gone. You have to rent it again if you want to see it again. If you buy it, then you can watch it as many times as you like. I've actually watched it twice now. So that will so I do advise actually going and simply buying it. So what's it like, Ben? What's it like? Well, my first thought when I started watching my first thought was, well, we've been waiting for this a long time. Everyone's been talking about this film. We've been waiting for it ages. It's really overdue. I mean, this is about a year since it premiered, when it premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival, which is one of the biggest movies. It's one of the biggest movie festivals, actually, certainly in the United States. So yeah, that's quite something. I mean, and I don't know. My first thought was, well, this is actually pretty unoriginal. It's the kind of thing that UFO Wood has been producing for ever since 2017. There's probably about a dozen of these kinds of films. And you know the type I'm talking about here, the type where there's a whole series of talking heads. Tends to be the same people, Tim Burchett, Eric Burleson, Lou Elizondo, etc., Ross Coulthart, Moskowitz, Luna, all those Congress people. You get them all in a place, and then there's scientists like Gary Nolan and Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor, all these people in sort of like a series of talking head interviews, and indeed they are in this film. Those names, apart from David Grush, those names I've given you are actually featured in this film. Although there's some the David Grush and Ross Coulthart are recorded, but yeah, you get a series of these talking head. Interspersed, there are vignettes of drone footage of Washington D.C. With some dramatic music. You get like a nighttime drone shot over the Washington Memorial and the White House and stuff like this. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about? And I thought to myself, so why is this different? I mean, it just seems rather cliche. I mean, it has a very high production value. It has an original music score, which was composed by people. It's not AI, it's composed by people. They are in the credits. And you get your list of witnesses and things like that. And and as I look through it, I realized, a lot of this information is stuff I already know. And in fact, if you are a seasoned ufologist in the post-2017 world, there's very little in this film which will actually surprise you. Lou Elizondo is like this has never happened before, that Lou Elizondo himself is kind of like the anchor, the figure, the central figure, the narrator. And he talks about his background, how he got involved in this with Harry Reid, setting this all up with Jay Stratton and people like that. And the reason was, of course, and Lewis had a lot of criticism for this, but the reason was he was concerned for national security, and indeed, so many people have given him some stick over this. But you know, and it's called, well, it's the threat narrative. My goodness me, the threat narrative. It's wrong. Well, it's actually not wrong to say that there is a threat element here. It's not. I mean, it doesn't mean, in parlance of military strategy, we're not talking about something you automatically shoot at. It's just, it is an unknown. It's an extremely powerful unknown. We don't know what its intentions are. We don't know what it wants from us. We don't know what it's doing here on planet Earth. It's been here a very long time. And that is a threat. That is something that military men need to concern themselves with. And Lou is a military man. This is kind of, he's seeing it through the lens of his experience. In the same way that I would see it through the lens of the hospital porter. He sees it through the lens of a military intelligence specialist. And I mean, people have been making hay with this. And before we go any further, let me just show you Greer. Is Dr. Stephen Greer. And he's done his own little, it's almost an hour long. He and Blake Cousins. It's called The Age of Disclosure. No, crossed out, Age of Deception. Breaking news special podcast, The Age of Deception, an in-depth discussion. Let me just I'm not going to play much of this, but I'm just going to have a quick look through it.
Hey, everybody.
There's Cousins here. Let's have a look. And it just talks about here unlocking the false narratives of a released documentary on UAP disclosure, newly released documentary. And it's all the stuff I said before. I mean, I do find this sort of thing entertaining, I must admit. I do enjoy it. And Greer's always good for a laugh. As long as I don't want to watch him for too long, or I'll get testosterone poisoning. But I mean, I do like to keep. I mean, unfortunately, he does make some good points in that particular video about not the film specifically, but about the possibility that this could be actually harnessed as some kind of false, all or nothing kind of false flag. The last card, as Carol Rosin called it. I mean, that is a reality. That is something that I am concerned about, and indeed, believe it, but I think Greer and Cousins are very unfair in this particular video. You can actually go and watch it. It's just called, where is it? It's just called Breaking News Special Podcast, Age of Deception, in-depth discussion. It's on Greer's channel. You can just go and watch it. But you see, what I think they're being unfair generally because of this. Their general attitude towards Elizondo and the people around him, which, as I've said before, may have. I think what bothers Greer about it, what really bugs him about Elizondo, I think he's dissembling a bit, to be honest, because I think what bugs him about the entire modern situation is disclosure is no longer all about him. And he wants it to be all about him. He wants to be the Mr. Disclosure. That's what he doesn't like, basically. But anyway, there's also Professor Simon Holland. I haven't seen this yet. This is one I haven't seen yet, but Simon Holland has also done a video about this. And he's got on Nick Cook. Nick Cook has changed his mind a lot lately. The Age of Disclosure with Nick Cook. Nick Cook has become, he's kind of changed his position, because when he made his two big documentaries in the 90s, the UFO Enigma and $1 Billion Secret, UFO's the Secret Elephant. He was very much a skeptic, but now he's kind of really, he was a bit of a backslapper, actually. He was going along with it's aliens to cover it. No, it's fake aliens to cover up secret aircraft narrative, the Mark Pilkington line. He's changed his mind considerably now. He really has. But I mean, almost everyone has said something about this, including me. It's been a kind of like everyone who's anyone in this community has been producing their own social media about this. It's caused a real bee's nest to be stirred up. I'll tell you, it really has, because that brings us back to the question of why is this film so special when it is in many ways very unoriginal. And that's what I want to talk about, and I want to talk about with you in the live stream, because this is a special film. And I think it's partly to do with its reach, its impact, the fact that Dan Farrar is involved with it. I know Dan Farrar has collaborated with James Fox, but we're getting this sort of overlap now between mainstream Hollywood and UFO wood. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a minute with Steve Bassett. But the film, it goes into the background of ATIP, and you get interviews with various people. There's a whole list of people that are interviewed, and it goes through various UFO incident. There's a guy called Colonel James Cobb, someone I've not heard of before, who talks about a detection by NORAD. This is the Missile Defense Command, where they actually monitor the skies for incoming ballistic missiles. There was the Nimitz incident. David Fravor, Alex Dietrich are in it. And there's others like Chris Mellon talking about how it's so taboo. And indeed, there's another issue that's brought up, which is the religious extremism element. I mean, maybe because this won't be the same in all countries, but certainly this is an issue for the United States. And that is that the people involved are very, very religious and are seeing it through their faith. They're seeing this whole issue reflected by their faith, which is that basically these aliens literally come from Satan. They are maybe harbingers of end times, things like that. And there are serious people, powerful people in the Department of Defense who believe that. And that's something that we have talked. It is mentioned in the film. And they found out what happened was that Elizondo and the others, they found out about the Legacy program. This is basically what this is the organization that runs this whole secrecy, basically the Legacy program. You might have heard about that quite a bit. That basically does the crash retrievals, for example, at Roswell and other places like that. And then they sequester the technology, they back engineer it, they keep it secret from the public. That's called the Legacy program. And strangely enough, it's mostly private. You see, it's actually very much been contracted out. This is a theme that comes up again and again in the film, that a lot of this now is corporate rather than government. It's not actually run directly by the state. It has been contracted out to various organizations like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, EG&G, etc. And this is not news to us, but it was originally done simply for legal loopholes. So, for example, if you want to make a Freedom of Information Act request, you can send it to the government. Like John. People have been doing this, like John Greenwald has been doing this since he was a kid, and they'll write back saying we don't have any information about that, and they're right. But you see, the FOIA doesn't actually apply to these private companies. It's the civilian exemption clause. And let's face it, this is not the first time that governments have done this. And this has affected me personally, because you get this in all elements of government service now, including National Health Service here in the UK. I was contracted out. I worked for the NHS. I was sold, my entire department was sold off to a company called ISS Medicline Limited. They did such an awful job, they were kicked out, but it took them 10 years because they're so corrupt, and they kept paying the trust board to look the other way. But they did eventually hit the media, because people were literally dying of post-operative infection because the wards were so disgustingly dirty. So the NHS actually sacked Medicline, and we were back as NHS. But then what they did was they then kept us as NHS, but they seconded us to a company called Carillion. You see, and now they've got there's companies like G4S and Mighty involved. So this happens all the time. It's outsourcing. It's basically, for various reasons, it's a legal loophole. For example, they could pull the troops out of a war zone and say, well, we're going to leave behind a few civilian contractors, and you get this idea that these are just guys who are going to these are just the builders who are going to dismantle the bases and something like that. But no, they're not. The people they leave behind are literally regiments of mercenaries who are going to do the job that the military normally did before they were then withdrawn for political reasons because of political pressure. But that political pressure doesn't apply to a private company. It doesn't apply to non-state actors, which is why this is why mercenaries are so common in the world today. And indeed, this Legacy program is no exception. It is, indeed, the Wilson Davis memo. He went, when Eric Davis went down the list of people, this bigot list of people who were involved, he was quite surprised. He didn't recognize any of the names. Hardly any of them had military titles. A lot of them were just like Dr. Mr. somebody or other, and they were names that he didn't even know. And he looked them up, and he found out they were on the faculties of various universities and things like that. or they were sort of like CEOs or on the boards of various contractors. Yeah, so that's a difficult, you see, because you can deal with political appointees very easily. Political appointees are very easy to sack. I mean, Trump has just sacked Kash Patel, hasn't he? I mean, and you could just say, you just point at them and say you're fired, and that's it. These are more difficult. I mean, the civil service as well. They often hold and indeed they discuss this in the film. The civil service often holds the deepest, darkest secrets, and they manipulate elected officials. I mean, the TV series Yes Minister is very good for that reason, because Yes Minister, if you've not seen it, is it's about a minister called Jim Hacker. He later becomes prime minister, and the title changes to Yes Prime Minister, who is a rather unintelligent and sort of self-centered and sort of very sort of myopic type of person. He doesn't really understand anything. He's a typical politician, and he's manipulated by his aide, a man called Sir Humphrey Appleby, who's a senior civil servant. And that comedy series is very funny, and it's very satirical, because that's exactly what the world is like. That's exactly what democratic nations are like. And this legacy program is typical of that. And so, well, Lou and the people on ATIP weren't allowed to talk to the media, so they were in a bit of a situation, because Lou wanted to get this out, and he was warned off. He had death threats at one point. He had a guy, his friend phoned him up and said, he was just sitting on the porch one night with his wife, and his friend phoned him up and said, Lou, there's been a discussion about whether you should be eliminated, and in other words, killed, and David Grush as well. And Ross Coulthart said, have people literally been murdered about this? And yeah, wet work does happen. It's not just a like a fictional thing. They do literally kill people, American citizens, without due process, for the purposes of, well, I was going to say national security, but the security of this corporate entity that controls this UFO secrecy. Lots of presidents don't know. I mean, the thing is, Marco Rubio said this. Marco Rubio was interviewed in this film. He's certainly the most senior figure ever to be interviewed in a UFO documentary. A sitting Secretary of State. This is a man who represents the United States on the world stage. So he's really second in command underneath Trump. And he's under the president of the United States. Then there's this there's this, what they call, I think they call them the Gang of Seven or Gang of Four, I can't remember. But there's like the Secretary of State, there's the Vice President, there's the Secretary of Defense, there's Secretary of the Treasury, and there's like these lists of senior second tier officials who are literally one step below the president. The president of the United States is above them and no one else. I mean, the only thing that comes close to this is would be, I think it'd be the Canadian chap. What's his name? Hillier. It's him. I wish I could. I'm getting old, I swear. Hellier, Paul Hellier. Dear me, I'm getting aphasic. I really, really am. Yeah. Paul Hellier, the Minister of Defense for Canada. Yeah, he's the only other, and he never actually got into this subject until decades after he retired. So he was not actually sitting in office. So it's very often lower individuals. It's people lower down the chain of command actually have more knowledge, because they are there for longer. They're harder to get rid of. I mean, we know this in any organization. The higher up you go in the hierarchy, the easier it is to get rid of you. So, for example, when I got sacked from the hospital portering service, there was a massive procedure to get rid of me, and they had to spend a lot of money and took a long time. If I'd been like head porter or head of facilities, they could have just snapped their fingers and I'd be out. And so it's the civil servant, it's often the junior staff members, it's the junior officials and the civil servants who actually hold the knowledge. And presidents don't always have a need to know. I mean, I hate the film Independence Day. It's appalling. It's really bad, but it's worth watching because it has some interesting information. And one is when this guy, they're on Air Force One, and these two refugees. There's Jeff Goldblum's character and his father's going, well, what about Roswell? You know all about this because of that Roswell incident. And the president said, oh, don't be silly. That's just a conspiracy theory. And then one of his officials says, Mr. President, that's not actually true. And that's actually quite realistic. It really is. So other people interviewed, I can give you a list of the people interviewed in the film, The Age of Disclosure. I mean, we'll go to the IMDb page, shall we, and have a look? And because it is a who's who of anyone who's ever been in any of these things before. Can you see that? You should be able to. Yeah, here we go. A lot of these people are just, they're not actually, they have, this is their only credit. Most of these people on this list, get out of the way. Most of the people on this list, this is their only movie credit. But there's Elizondo, of course, Jay Stratton, Hal Puthoff, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, Eric Davis, James Cobb. I've mentioned him. He was like a NORAD Vice Director of Operations. Again, Fravor Dietrich Graves, very well known. Chris Mellon, very well known. Kirsten Gillibrand, he was the senator who chaired the UAP investigation. She's in it. James Clapper, former director of national intelligence, the job now being done by Tulsi Gabbard, who has been saying some very interesting things. Mike Gallagher, he was a U.S. representative from Wisconsin. He was on the committee. Mike Rounds, of course, one of the people behind the UAP Disclosure Act. Dan Crenshaw's in it briefly. He's famous. He's a representative famous for only having one eye. And this guy was in the Aviation Security Council, Travis Taylor, Tim Gallaudet, Gary Nolan. He talks a lot about the biological aspect of these things because there's now a sixth observable. Mike Flaherty, Andre Carson, Anna Paulina Luna, John Roberts, ATIP member, Christopher Miller, Jim Semivan, Tim Burchett, of course. I love that guy, Tim Burchett. He's a hero. He actually does this speech, and we've seen it before because it was the one he gave News Nation. He says he wants free energy declassified because he's fed up with the war pigs ruling everything. Mike Gold of NASA. Now he was not, interesting. I should have mentioned he was not on that committee the other day talking about 3i Atlas, and I wonder why. Bob Jacobs is in it. I'll come back to that. Charles King he's not been in these things before. He's a Air Force security, and there's Bob Salas, Carl Nell, of course, and they've got Harry Truman in it, 33rd president of the United States, even though he died a long time ago, like Kennedy. But and Reagan, Bush, Clinton, and that's because this is archive footage, and Obama too is in it, and Donald Trump's in it, Joe Biden, Dick Cheney. Chuck Schumer, but the thing is, Harry Reid is actually interviewed. He's actually interviewed for this before he died. Alexandria occasionally Curtius, as you know, she was in the committee. It's interesting sitting next to Mike Gates, this radical conservative, and she's a socialist. This is why the Guardian said that UFOs were uniting a divided country, and it goes lots and lots of other things like this. Yes, Pope John Paul II, yeah. He's in it. Joe Khalil of News Nation. He used to follow me on Twitter. He doesn't anymore. Elizabeth Vargas. I follow her. I wish he'd follow me. He goes on. There's the Jimmy Kimmel's in it because of the various interviews that he gives. Because he's interviewed all the presidents and former presidents and saying things like, he's interviewed Bush, Clinton, Obama, and every single one of these interviews, you ask them about the UFOs, and the answers they give are very, very interesting indeed. And then it turns out that talking about aviation, apparently, this is interesting because the FAA official was mentioned, whatever his name is, whose name is, he's up there. I just mentioned his name. What's his name again? Let's have a look. Sorry, I should have these. I wish I'd just be able to think of names off the top of my head and go, whoa, that's great. I just know exactly who I'm talking about now. And this is who I'm talking about. Anyways, the FAA official, he said something interesting. He says that they don't use primary radar. Only the military use primary radar. And this is interesting because, as you know from my MH370 videos, primary radar is how you detect objects in space or objects in airspace. And so civil aviation doesn't do that anymore. They just leave it to the military. And the question is, why is that? And this is something I'd not heard of before. This is something new in this film. Why does the civil aviation not do that anymore? Because if you remember from MH370, if you watch my videos on that, I've got a portal about MH370 actually. Seems I've got a portal about anything. I've got a portal over almost everything now. But if you look at my portal, here we go. MH370. I talk about that there. There you go. Secondary radar is when which is basically it's called squawking, when the plane actually gives off its own signal, and secondary radar picks that up. That's what the aviation uses now. So which means is the only way the airline industry knows about UAP is either if the military chooses to share what it's detected with them, or if the pilot sees it himself or detects it on his anti-collision radar, which is separate. Each plane has its own short-range anti-collision radar. That's it. And this guy was saying, well, why is that? Why have they decided this? He believes that the FAA have stopped using primary radar because they don't want the aviation industry learning about UAPs, which of course it's a risk to flight safety. I actually wrote an article for UFO Truth magazine. I interviewed Todd Curtis on this. We need to talk about flight safety. So they're putting pilots and crew and passengers at risk because they're keeping the secret. So that scene at the beginning of 2001, not 2001, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where the air traffic controllers are talking to the pilot saying, do you want to report a UFO over? Oh, I wouldn't know what to report. Negative. And things, you remember that scene? Very famous scene at the air traffic control place. I think it's the second or third scene of the movie. They wouldn't have an option now unless the pilot sees it himself. That's worrying. That's worrying. Elizondo then he goes through the 6 observables, and he does it like a school teacher with a blackboard. It's quite cool, actually. So those are just to remind ourselves: it's positive lift, which is the ability, and anti-gravity, the ability to overcome gravity without a visible means of propulsion, or such as control surfaces, wings, rotors, envelope. Instantaneous acceleration, so it can be literally hovering 1 minute and then going at thousands of miles an hour the next. Hypersonic velocities without signatures, so you wouldn't get sonic booms or vapor trails. Low observability, difficulty in observing objects clearly. This could have something to do with what's known as the warp bubble, which they talk about later on. Transmedium travel, the ability to move between different environments, air, space, water, etc. This is interesting because if you think about it, we don't actually have any transmedium. Do we have any transmedium vehicles at all? I mean, there is such a thing as that there are amphibious cars, and they've got one in London. I mean, because I started thinking about, do we have an amphibious vehicle? You could, do we have transmedium vehicle? There's an amphibious car, which is basically, it's like a bus, and you can get on it, and it doubles up as a boat. It'll actually drive down into the water, and it functions as a boat as well. You could say, well, an aeroplane is transmedium because it lands on the runway and it can drive along the runway, so therefore it's a land vehicle as well. Well, no, it's not. The plane's wheels and its movement is strictly connected to its flight, so it only moves on the ground because it has to between the terminal and the runway. So its movement on the ground is only there. It's not a land vehicle. You can't take a jumbo jet and drive it down the street to Tesco's and park it in the car park. It's not a land vehicle. It's an aviation. It's an air vehicle. It's a flying vehicle, which has wheels and can move along the ground. So it can because there's a space between where it takes off and lands and the terminal building where passengers get on and off. The same with like a seaplane. A seaplane is not a ship. It can land on the water. So it functions like a boat, but it's not a ship. It's not any more than a normal airplane with wheels is a car. And then there's a 6th observable. It's just been discovered, thanks to Gary Nolan, and he's interviewed about this. Biological considerations. The presence of a biological component, which is really how it affects the human body. In other words, contact with extraterrestrial life or extraterrestrial intelligence sometimes results in illnesses of various kinds. And indeed, I know people who've had several people, more than one, who've had contact with ET, and their health has suffered as a result. One famous one, of course, is John Burroughs, one of the witnesses to Rendlesham Forest. He had to fight in court, firstly to get his war pension because he was injured in the line of duty, and secondly, so that he could get his medical records declassified. He turned up at a hospital with angina. His chest was hurting, which of course is a very serious symptom of a possibly fatal condition. And the doctor said, we can't access your medical records. They're classified. That could have killed him. If the doctors can't get his medical records, he could have ended up dead. And a lawyer called Pat Frascogna actually worked to get his medical records released. He went to court. It was very interesting. And of course, Elizondo has had his life. He believes he's had death threats. So has David Grush. He's had lies told about him. And what's interesting, when he describes the legacy program, he says, he and some of the others say something interesting. Hal Puthoff says this as well, that there is a team. There's basically a team of people that deal with this specifically, and we've seen them in action. I mean, Kaz Clark has taken photographs of them. Whenever there's a UFO incident, major UFO incident, a close encounter, they will go to wherever it is in the world, but usually by helicopter. They have helicopters and aircraft, and they will deal with it. They'll seal off the area, they'll get rid of the evidence and things like that. And what's interesting about this is that this is exactly what Richard D. Hall said in his UFOs and NATO documentary. Do you remember that? Yeah, that he got in touch with this person, Tony Dodd's mate. It's like this guy who was a friend of Tony Dodd's, who's ex-Special Forces, ex-British Special Forces, who was a part of these crash retrieval teams. This fits in exactly with that. It matches exactly what Richard discovered through this really, really interesting contact. Yeah, according to Nolan, there's injuries and illnesses, including internal scarring, blood problems. And he said 25% mortality rate, some of them. So about a quarter of the people who have these encounters die. That's more than I thought. That's really quite scary. Apparently in 1989, there was a Tic Tac, a 40-foot-long Tic Tac, bigger than the one seen by Fravor and Dietrich, recovered in the USSR. This is shortly before the USSR collapsed. And you can bet, though, that Putin's Russia knows all about that. And indeed, this is something else that I'll bring up with Steve in a minute. Magenta, right. Again, this is, I mean, they say that the Vatican knows about this. And I thought, well, they don't go into any details, but I know that Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who was the astronomer at the Vatican, knows about UFOs and has spoken about it. He died, and he's dead now, unfortunately. But he did an interview with Paola Harris before he died, and he talked about this. The Magenta crash. Now, I know this is controversial, and a lot of people think it's made up. But I've met Roberto Panotti, the Italian author and researcher, who talked about this. That in 1931, I believe, there was a crash in Magenta, which is in Lombardy, in northern Italy. And the Mussolini regime actually set up an organization, the first ever in the world, to deal with the UFO issue. Timothy Good has written about this as well. But I do recommend, Timothy Good's books on this subject are excellent. But, there's actually a free pamphlet you can get online. It's PDF now. I don't think there's any copyright on it. It's by Roberto Panotti. And it's called The Fascist UFO Files. You can read it in a couple of hours. It's very interesting, but it has all the evidence in it. Apparently, right, of all the people who know about this or don't know about this, a lot of presidents don't. But there actually was apparently in the first Bush administration, Herbert Walker Bush, there was a serious discussion about whether to do disclosure. Now, I find that a bit dubious, but apparently several of the witnesses said there was, and they didn't do it because they thought of 64 reasons not to have disclosure. 64 reasons. I don't know what those reasons specifically were, but Elizondo and the others actually do say, well, it's to do with ontological shock. So I'm guessing that a lot of those 64 reasons are basically the government patronizing us saying, well, you just people are just too frightened and will just panic. I hate it when they say that. Oh, people will just panic. Well, you're not panicking, are you? And they go, oh, no, we're superior. We're not like ordinary people. Oh, it's about time they stop treating us like kids. And now the Roswell incident, they mentioned the Roswell incident. Now, of course, this is the incident of incidents, the original crash retrieval. You see, I've actually talked about this in my book, Roswell Rising, a Novel of Disclosure, available at all good bookshops now, price £10. This, of course, is the original, and indeed the term Roswell. It's a name of this town in New Mexico, but basically it's a common noun for anything like this. You get the Welsh Roswell, the Russian Roswell, the Brazilian Roswell, etc. The thing about it is, that wasn't the first. I've made this point before. Remember we talked about the Legacy program and how it has these response teams, the ones that Richard D. Hall also talks about. And is mentioned in this film. So my nose is itching. So you have to excuse me, my nose itches, my eyes itch when I'm doing this. Well, when Roswell happened, it's pretty clear that response team was already there and already active, and it knew what it was doing. The people who dealt with the Roswell incident, the team that dealt with it, and there was a special detachment sent, I believe, because we know that Glenn Dennis actually encountered two men from the men on the base that he didn't recognize, and he knew everyone on the base because he worked there. He encountered two men he didn't recognize. This indicates that they already knew what they were doing when Roswell happened, which means there must have been Roswell-like incidents before Roswell. I do think the truth embargo, as Steve has often said, it could have ended that day. There was a lot going on, of course. The Defense Act was passed, which completely overturned the entire military. The US Air Force was formed, the CIA was formed. This was in the aftermath of World War II, and indeed the Indian Civil War was raging at the time. I've actually done a movie about that. I've done a video about that called, it's actually one of my roving reviews. It's called The Last Viceroy. Is that right? I'm just going to check. I've got these. Yeah. Oh, here it is. Yeah, Viceroy's House. This is it. There's another film called The Last Viceroy. This is a good film. The film The Viceroy's House, starring, and again, guess who it stars? Gillian Anderson of X-Files. She's in it. Gillian Anderson. Oh, the picture's not appearing. But that's her there. You can see her there. That's a good film, actually, and it's about the Indian Civil War, which it takes. Literally, that film takes place during the entire period of Roswell, summer of 1947. And then when we come on to the fact that there was apparently UFOs at the Bush family ranch. So it's clear that George W. Bush and his father H.W. Bush did know something about it, because something happened there apparently. But ATIP went to get information from them. Now ATIP and ORSAP, at least one was official, one was unofficial, was set up specifically for this reason, to investigate these things. But when they got to the Bush Ranch, the Air Force Office of Special Investigation had made everyone sign NDAs and they couldn't speak to them. Now, AFOSI, AFOSI, right? That's Richard Doty's organization. And then we come on to the nuclear issue, and this includes Bob Jacobs. I've actually congratulated Bob personally on his appearance in this. Bob Jacobs' story is very, very well known. He was involved. He was basically contracted to NASA to work on missiles and rockets and things like that. And they were actually test firing a ballistic missile and with a dummy warhead. And of course, this UFO, this flying saucer appears, and it goes all the way around it like that, firing beams of light at it, and the thing just blows up. And when he gets back to headquarters, they say, Dr. Jacobs, says Major Mansman, his boss, what is that there? And he says, looks like we got a UFO, sir. And he says, Mr. Dr. Jacobs, you're never to speak of this again. Do you understand? He says, yes, sir. But now Major Mansman is now backing up Bob Jacobs and saying, yeah, no, it was true. It was real. I told him to be quiet, but, basically I was just covering the whole thing up. Funnily enough, there was actually a plan, an insane plan there's actually a book called Nuke the Moon, because apparently they did actually literally want to do that. Nuking the moon and other intelligence schemes. Here we go. This is it. Yeah, nuking the moon. This is a film, Nuking the Moon, or it's a book. Vince Houghton, Nuking the Moon. Yeah, they had this insane idea to put a massive nuclear bomb on a rocket and send it to the moon and blow it up. They wanted to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon. I mean, why? Why? It's insane. I mean, they were even talking about having it like making sure the warhead was really big so it would leave a crater, and they could name the crater after somebody. It was, these people are insane. But anyway, this apparently what Bob was doing, he didn't know at the time, but what Bob was involved in, the project was actually a part of that. It was a preliminary test. And the fact that the project was abandoned, and maybe it was because of this UFO encounter, because the message, of course, could be interpreted in many ways. In some ways, they could be saying, look, we don't like you using these weapons, but if you're going to use them, keep them on your own bloody planet. You know, that could be it. There was a giant glowing ball above the missile silo. The Vandenberg Red Square, that's a famous one, a big red square-shaped object above Vandenberg AFB in California. Harry Reid tried to get information on this and couldn't. Now, there was a discussion, as Greer often does this, and there was a discussion in here about the warp bubble and possibilities of how these craft actually work, because we know from the observables we can glean a bit of information about how they work, and it appears they do have the ability to control gravity. And we know the Alcubierre drive, which is the basis of Star Trek in fiction. You know, we're going to warp factor 1, Captain, and things like this, where you literally control gravity. You create a gravity well in front of something, and then it moves towards that gravity well. And because of how Albert Einstein discovered that gravity affects space-time, you know, you get like, this is why time travels at different rates and things like that. I mean, you even have like, they mentioned the fact that some UFOs appear to be TARDIS-like, which is that they appear bigger on the inside than the outside. And I've got the perfect case, actually, which I mentioned. I've mentioned this before, but this is a 1976 close encounter in Leeds. And a man called Jan Zidlecki, a Polish immigrant, he worked at a garage. He worked at something called Bryden's Garage in Leeds. I actually went to the location where this happened, I remember. And this was like 2 a.m. He suddenly saw a bright light glowing in his window, and he thought the garage might have caught fire because he lived nearby. He went out there, and he saw this craft hovering off the ground in a nearby park. And he went over there, and he saw these creatures, these beings, these humanoid beings, and they let him come. They took him on board the spaceship, and it had all kinds of strange things, like it had a little like channel with water in and things like that. What's really weird about it, even though this thing, he estimated this object was, I think he said it was, how big was it? I've just got some notes here. I think he said it was like 20 to 30 feet across. It wasn't that big. Size of a bus, something like that. Or coach or something. And then he got him put inside, and he had like several levels. So he actually went up some stairs, and there was like an upstairs bit. It was much bigger on the inside, which of course is a feature of the Doctor's TARDIS in Doctor Who. That is until Russell T Davies decides it's racist and he has to live. You can't have things bigger on the inside than the outside because that's white supremacy or something ridiculous like that. But at the moment, it still does. It still does. So we don't know what their purpose is, but we do know, and this is discussed in the film, they're keeping an eye on us. They seem to be monitoring us. The UFOs, we essentially are having a global flap that's been ongoing in greater or lesser degree since the 1940s, because that's when we found nuclear weapons, as Jim Marsh used to say. Oh my God, the kids have found the matches. And again, they do mention the possibility of solving this problem through unprecedented levels of cooperation. That's actually a quote at 138.30. But this could, of course, fit in with Project Bluebeam and the fake alien invasion. Unlike a lot of people, I know Danny Sheehan won't go along with this. I don't think Steve will. I mean, I'm not going to mention this with him, but I know Danny Sheehan rejects this idea. But this is something I think Greer gets right. Not that I think he's being fair. I don't think his assessment of this film is fair, but he is right to be concerned about this, which is that they might, if they want to go for double or quits for the one world government, this is the way to do it. If nothing else has worked, and goodness knows they've tried in all kinds of ways, haven't they, over the last few decades? The last card, Carol, the last card. You will stop the weaponization of space. Or indeed the arms race, because as I'm going to discuss with Steve, they win, different countries have the ability to back engineer ET craft, because the US does not have a monopoly here any more than it had a monopoly on nuclear weapons, except the monopoly on American nuclear weapons lasted from about 1945 to 1947 or 8. I mean, it was just a couple of years. And then the Soviets started working on theirs. They detonated their first one in 1949. Same thing's happening here. And it's not spies this time. These crash retrievals happen all over the place. And of course, some of the most interesting has happened in Russia. I mean, there's this really good book by Mr. Pavlov Stonihilov, aka Paul Stonehill. But he's written this really good book about, I think Philip Mantle co-authored it. I do recommend it. He's a Russian who actually, here we are, UFO Case Files of Russia. This is with Philip Mantle and Paul Stonehill. And there's several others. Here we are, Paul Stonehill, Philip Mantle, Russia's Roswell Incident. And there's several other examples here. That's Paul Stonehill. And he's written a lot more about Russian cases. He's been researching the Russian cases with his fellow Russians. I mean, there's a big ufological community in Russia, including Vladimir Zhazha, and even Marina Popovich, who's actually a famous test pilot. And Paul Stonehill's he's learned a hell of a lot about what's gone on in Russia. You look at my Russian Roswell video. I know people say that's been debunked. I don't think it has. So there's no doubt that this is not just Americans. And of course, this could be weaponized. And I mean, according to Ashton Forbes, it already has. Ashton Forbes, well, Ashton doesn't go into the alien thing, but he says this energy has been weaponized. It has been created, it has been adapted, it's been used in anger against MH370. And I don't discount that. In my view, though, it's quite likely it has come from extraterrestrial sources. I mean, Dr. Judy Wood, has her own. She believes she has and Andrew Johnson believes they have a kind of like. They have like a chain of custody when it comes to the technology used to destroy the World Trade Center, which can be traced back to John Hutchison and the fact that Colonel John Alexander was monitoring and supervising him and stuff like this. Although, in the case of a lot of this stuff, I think you are looking at something ET. I think it has an ET origin. And then we get to the point where I think it shows how dated this film is. And things are moving so fast that even a few months, things can be out of date. They talk about the Schumer Rounds bill. That is I've got it here. I've got the whole thing here. You can actually get the whole thing here. This, of course, is the Schumer amendment. It says that this has been rejected before. I know Danny Sheehan thinks that it still has teeth, and that even though some clauses were removed, it's still worth going with, and Steve is positive about it too. But of course, since this film was finished and it was wrapped, and this is quite recent, the amendment has been defeated again for a third time, and that includes the crucial clauses. I mean, the amendment is incredible. I mean, you can get the whole text here. But I mean, it has phrases like non-human intelligence. This is full of bumf. This is full of bureaucraties. But it has things like non-human intelligence, unidentified aerial phenomena, legacy program, etc., etc. And it makes all kinds of recommendations which include like the ability, for example, the executive branch to set up a review board, the possibility of eminent domain, which means the state would then would take back all the facilities that it contracted out over many, many decades to various private contractors and things like that. And of course, it was defeated. Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds, they did their best to push it through. And of course, a lot of the Congress people are on their side now. People like these heroic figures that we all know and love, Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, Jared Moskowitz, Andre Carson, etc., they all appear in this particular movie. But then there's the two Mikes, and there's the people in Congress and who actually have had their campaigns funded by the military-industrial complex, and then the military-industrial complex says, "Okay, we got you into Congress. Now you've got to start paying us back." And the opposition to this bill has come primarily from those Congress people. And is that a coincidence? I know that Anthony Garcia, and was Andy Garcia? I can't remember his name. He wants to create a separate bill rather than putting it as an amendment and just get that passed. And he's working on that now. But so that if the film ends there with that, and of course the news is that it's been defeated again. But as I've said before, there are other options. There was, of course, catastrophic disclosure. And the fact, that I hate that term. It's a horrible term because it implies, this is something awful. It's terrible, and it'll lead to zombies rising from the graves, things like that. But all it means is that someone outside the normal chain of command will approach the public independently. That's all it means. That's what catastrophic disclosure means. And indeed, it's already happened. You could say that's what Larry Warren did. With you say what Larry Warren did with Rendlesham Forest is a form of catastrophic disclosure. I think we're getting to the point where it's become not just trendy, but it's actually, we are reaching the point where I think silence is becoming riskier than participation. It could be that a lot of people are thinking, well, they can see the way the wind's blowing, and they can see the writing on the wall, and they're thinking, maybe it's not worth my while continuing in this particular vein that I'm in now. Maybe to the winning, the winning side, I better start joining the winning side rather than the losing side. And things like that happen long before there's any serious change. We saw it with the collapse of the Soviet Union. People started jumping ship. Several years before the actual collapse came. But in Gorbachev's administration, people would start jumping ship, and they'd see the more clever ones, the more intelligent ones, and the ones with more foresight would think, well, I better get into the lifeboat now before this Titanic hits the iceberg. And others were probably a bit more obtuse and more stuck in their ways, will say, I'm sticking with my original plan, come what may. One name one individual who's notable by his absence is David Grush. David Grush does not feature anywhere in this film. And I don't know exactly, there's some speculation about why that is, but I'd say David Grush is taking more of a back seat now. And maybe we shouldn't blame him, because he has had aggravation just like Elizondo has. I think Grush is he's a younger and more vulnerable person than Elizondo. He has had mental problems. I mean, thanks to that piece of shit Klippenstein, we all know about that now, don't we? And maybe he's decided he needs to look after his own health and look after his own life. He has a wife. I don't know if he's got kids, but he's got a wife. He may want to focus inward on his family now. Maybe focus on his current work. I believe he's an estate agent now. And you can't blame him. He's done so much, hasn't he? Or then again, he may come back. He may be taking a rest, and then he'll return. But he's not in this movie at all, apart from recorded scenes from News Nation. There was an awful lot of what you might call a library footage, or stuff from News Nation, which has been in these kinds of films before. So that's it, guys. So really, what comes next, of course, is the live stream. But before we go there, let's see what Steve Bassett has to say. Yes, the one and only Steve Bassett of the Paradigm Research Group. I managed to get a hold of him again, and we've had a little discussion, and it's very, very interesting indeed. So I hope you enjoy it. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Steve Bassett to the Hapanmo Show on Hapanmo Radio once again, and of course Hapanmo TV, because we're going to make this a visual and audio experience for my viewers and listeners, depending on which you prefer. How are you, sir?
I am fine, Ben. Doing my best. It's hectic here, as you can imagine. It's like very, very hectic. But I'm trying to keep up, and I think we're going to have something huge happen very soon.
I really do too, because of this thing behind me. You can see the Age of Disclosure, which is I've watched it. It's not cheap actually, and it seems to be quite an inflated price. But I would still say go for it, and it's worth. In fact, it's worth buying rather than renting, because it's like $14.49 to rent, but it's like $18.50 to buy. If it's going to cost that much, you might as well just buy it, and then you can watch it over and over again. Which, I mean, I don't know why that is, whether they've got financial problems or something. I'm not sure why it's so expensive. But
well, I know.
All right.
And put it this way, they weren't able to get a huge a screening, 500, 1,000 screens, because again, Hollywood's just not going to do that right now. However, he was able to do something almost as good. He was, and I say he, I'm talking about Dan Farrar, the director, writer, the person behind it. He was able to get it screened in 3 appropriate theaters, part of a group of theaters called the Angelica Pop-Ups, which are kind of cool. It's like retro, very nice. And they have one in LA, one in New York, one in Washington, D.C. And because he was able to get it in 3 theaters that are going to run it for a week or so, at least, all right.
Oh, great.
It qualifies for an Oscar nomination.
I heard about that, yeah, because after its premiere at South by Southwest Film Festival, they was looking at like distribution and things like that. It's been like
it's been a year. I mean, it's been a year since it came out, and I don't know to what extent that year involved just trying to get the best financing deal, or whether he was waiting for the best timing, because he could not have timed this film better. So much happened in this last year ahead of the dropping of that film on the 21st of November, that it just made it that much more powerful. And so, yeah, he's trying to recoup the costs. Also,
that's understandable.
By doing a live stream, it might make it more difficult to get that film up on an expanded screening. In other words, there's nothing to preclude the possibility that film could end up getting a large screening, right, on regular theaters. We've never had that.
I'd love them to do a UK tour. I mean, I know they're doing like you just mentioned, they're doing a small big screen tour in the States. But if they ever want to come over here, I'd be glad to help them. I can recommend a few picture houses in Oxford that would show it, definitely.
What some people are doing is they're renting it and having some people come home and watch it together, and everybody chip in $4 or $5. Right?
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Well, you know what I'm doing right now is I'm having a kind of watch party on my YouTube channel. I mean, so that basically this is the review section of the watch party. Then there might be a live stream where we all discuss it after everyone's gone and watched it. So that's what this video you're watching is now. What I'm talking to Steve about. It's going to be part of that. But yeah, it's now on first watching. I mean, I know this is just a superficial judgment, and I know it's not a correct one. My first thought was it's not terribly original. I mean, if you want to go through all the movies that have come out in the last few years, where you see lots of talking heads of various Congress people, lots of drone shots of Washington D.C. in the dark, and clouds going past in like slow motion and things like that. There's about a dozen of those that come out of UFO world lately. So, what makes this one different? What makes this one special?
Well, are these ones the other ones you're referring to? Did any of them have the former chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee or the current Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor talking about the fact that this phenomenon is real? Did they
No,
have
they
that?
didn't. They had like Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna and people and David Grush and people like that. But no, they didn't have anyone as senior as Marco Rubio and people like
No.
that. No, they
Or
didn't.
all four of the major Congress people that are addressing this issue? That's as two other senators, Rounds,
Mm.
Gillibrand. None of them even
No,
come close to that.
no, that's
You
right.
see,
They
it
had.
wasn't. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say they had like some of these players, but not all of them together, and no one quite in that position. What they call the Gang of Four or whatever the main character people, the main cabinet figures are in the U.S. federal government.
No. In fact, there's never been anything that has had an assemblage of high-ranking both scientists, political figures, even people that are in the administration of the current president, ever even come remotely close to this compilation of people talking without exception to the reality of this presence. So when I see this film, it's not about give me something new. It's hard to give me anything new.
That's true.
It's about make an extraordinary statement that millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people can see, for which it is new and extraordinarily powerful as we approach the end of this truth embargo. It is a political activist documentary, basically, designed to get something done. If disclosure takes place, this film will go down in history. It will also get watched a lot and maybe return an enormous investment. But either way, it's a historical film. Dan Farah gets the credit for being the one that finally got it all together. We have tried, various people that we know and our colleagues have tried, but they didn't have the connections, the resources to be able to go there until finally a Hollywood professional who's worked on A-list films, who has the connections and the agents and the managers and the access to the production and whatever, did a film that was worthy of getting massive screen distribution, but that was a bridge too far, but was able to get it done, get it out, and market it like crazy, right? So that it, and even make it eligible for an Oscar nomination. So it is an historical breakthrough film. I get it. I understand that a lot of people would not get that. They're not familiar with the 80-year history of the truth embargo. They're not familiar with all of the enormous efforts to prevent this truth from coming out. So they're going to see it in a different way. But I think they'll look back in good time and go, my God, wow, was that a major thing that just happened? And it's still happening, I assure you.
It is, and of course, this is much more mainstream than the others. I mean, no disrespect to James Fox and Stephen Greer. I mean, I've watched their work with interest. I'm a big admirer of their work. But Dan Farah is he's much more mainstream. Like he's worked with Steven Spielberg on, and he's directed his own movies. And he's worked with Steven Spielberg. I'm just trying. Sorry, my page is frozen. Can you still see me? All right.
You could call it mainstream.
Yeah.
I would call it. What am I thinking? What's the word I am looking for? Because I mean, the films that James Fox has done are fine and they're mainstream, and I consider mainstream films. They're not fringe. They're up on streaming. You can see them. People have seen them all around the world. But this is the film that got the imprimatur of the Hollywood film industry in a sense, by someone that had all the bells and whistles. For instance, okay, and this is no other film like this addressing this issue. The best that we have produced out of the citizen science research documentary world, right, where you work with very little money because the stigma of the issue has been following your whole life, has had this happen. So first of all, full presentation at the second largest film festival in the country, South by Southwest. Then a year goes by, all right, and it's announced that it's going to premiere in 3 theaters. Fine. And then leading up to that, just a short time before that, the director-writer of the film, Dan Farah, just happens to go on Bill Maher. Now, I don't know if you all follow Bill Maher's show, Real Time with Bill Maher from the UK. It is a big deal.
Yeah,
He
we're
gets
familiar with it, and I've seen the interview, and but I think yeah, that is Bill Maher's like he's like the equivalent of, I don't know what the equivalent in the UK is, because we tend to share our celebrities now, but it is like primetime TV, isn't it?
Yeah, and furthermore, he gets the primary, the coveted 10-minute interview. Now, what about the show? The show, real time, is the highest viewed show in terms of cumulative views on Netflix. Do you know how many millions of views that is? All right.
Well, if you're
So
talking internationally, because Netflix, of course, is a global
well,
outlet, a global
everything.
platform.
No, this is not an American issue. The
Hmm.
truth embargo was an absolute global issue. So
Hmm.
millions of views from that. All right. And of course, it's a favorable interview. Bill Maher has now come around on the issue. He's positive on it. Brings up the issue of the nuke shutdowns. Dan Farah had all the right answers. This is a very powerful 10-minute interview leading up to the film. But then, Real Time with Bill Maher has an after show, an overtime, where they a lot of shows do this now,
Hmm.
where they do about 10 minutes or so after the show that's going to go up online on YouTube. All right. It's called
Yeah.
overtime. So Dan is in part of that. Now that goes up on Real Time with Bill Maher overtime on YouTube. That has 2.3 million subscribers. The clips that are up there, if you go back and just kind of look at previous ones over time, have accumulated 15, 20, 25 million views. And Dan
Oh,
Farah is part of that. All right. And so that leads into the film. All right. Obviously, that's going to expand the awareness of it, it's going to increase the reach. And then a short time after the film, Dan Farah goes on Joe Rogan,
wow,
who
that's
has
the ultimate
20
accolade, isn't
million
it? Yeah.
subscribers. Okay. And he does an interview with Joe Rogan. All right. That uh, is 2 hours long. And Joe is really into the issue now. He always has been, but he's gone even further.
Yeah.
And this stuff is brought up. He even goes so far as to bring up something that's been in play here now. It's happening in DC. The issue of disclosure, meaning the confirmation from the president, is in play.
Mm.
And during that interview with Farah, he brings up that fact. And Joe says, maybe I'll talk to the president about that. Well, Joe Rogan could talk to the president about that. Joe
Yeah,
Rogan's interview with Donald Trump is a significant role in getting him elected.
yeah, I
Right.
remember that one. I was when he was campaigning for a second term, and
So
they
there's
mentioned he mentioned the UFOs as well.
so Dan Farah is actually doing that. That is going to get a huge amount of views. In fact, Joe Rogan has done a bunch of interviews on his the Joe Rogan Experience on this
Yeah,
subject.
he has. Yes.
Maybe 15, 20.
Mm.
Some of them have gotten substantial views. One of them, going back a few years, with of all people, Bob Lazar. He came on, and they had an extensive interview. Bob Lazar's story may actually prove out. That is now had 75 million views.
That's more than the number of people in my country. That's incredible. Yeah.
Exactly. And so when I say this issue is getting close to being resolved, when I say that disclosure is really, really close, I absolutely mean it. We have gone to places, we have seen exposure, we've had things happen in just a few years beyond everything else that's happened since 1947.
Mm.
And so we're getting close to this. And the age of disclosure is going to be seen as playing a very major role in kind of finally breaking it open.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Farrow is he's a household name in Hollywood. I think he produced Ready Player One. This is a Steven Spielberg sci-fi movie. I've not seen it.
He's one of the producers on Ready Player One, which was, of course, a top A1 film. And that, in other words, he's the real guy. He is a real Hollywood professional, but he happens to be into this issue, and he put his money where his mouth is, and created a film that the best of our colleagues, God knows, I love them all, could not do, right? But he can. Now we're hoping that Hollywood is going to maybe start working with the James Foxes and others to do more docs, but actually, bring in their extraordinary knowledge and skills. And work with them. We'll see. hopefully that
and
happens.
hopefully that yeah, exactly. And then think of the funding that people like James Fox will get now, and he's been sort of like he's been like selling his he's been selling his organs to get his last few titles
Yeah,
out, and people think this is all a big grift, it's all a scam. James had lost everything. I mean, he was what he's talked quite frankly about the financial troubles he's had in his productions, but just let him get a good producer and get a budget. I mean, he deserves it. And definitely, absolutely, and at the same time, what's interesting, I think, seeing as Dan Farrer and Steven Spielberg work so closely together, is I don't think it's a coincidence that the hitherto unnamed film by Steven Spielberg is heading very, very quickly towards its release date. This is a film I describe as one being made backwards. Because normally when a movie's made, the pre-production is done quite quietly without any media attention. Then you get like the trailers and the build-up, and then you get like the release date, which the release date is announced sometime during the production process or post-production. This has been made backwards. It started with the release date, not even a working title being published,
sure.
and then there was the production with all the publicity. There was photo shoots at the location shots and things like that. And I brought this up with Bryce Zabel, actually, when I met him at Contact in the Desert, and he just said, "Oh, don't read too much into that." But I do think this is something I've not seen before. It's as if Steven Spielberg, who admitted in his 20th anniversary special on documentary on Close Encounters in 1997, that he'd lost his interest in UFOs and he couldn't make that film today. Well, something has obviously rekindled that interest.
Of
And at the
course.
same time, his friend Dan Farrer is working on his own. He's done his own production, a documentary. So clearly, there's an undertone to all this. There's a subtext, which is really, really thrilling.
Well, what do you think that subtext is?
That behind the scenes, everyone knows that this is the legacy program is being exposed. The truth embargo it's just not sustainable anymore, and it's literally. I mean, I know I've sort of like. I've mocked you a little bit in the past, and I've said, "Oh, Steve always says it's going to be in a few months." He said that all the time. But Steve, I really feel it. We're so close now. I can really feel it. I can feel it in my bones. I can feel it in my blood.
Well,
I really
aside from the
can.
fact that I've never said it's going to be in a few months ever, but
Oh,
I've
look.
certainly leaned into the optimism, into the prospects. But now, oh yeah, by the way, Spielberg's film is going to be fictional, but it'll be interesting to see how the issues that we're dealing with are touched on. But
Fiction,
Bruckheimer,
you can tell so much through fiction. I mean, in my book, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure. I made it up. It's complete. It's based. It's some of the scenes. The beginning is set around the Roswell incident, but it's a book about this sort of thing. And I made it up completely. None of the characters are real. The scenario is not real. But I believe that fiction can tell truth. Stories can reveal
of course.
real
And
truth.
then Marty Bruckheimer has also got a major film on this subject coming out, I think, around the same time as Spielberg. And
Really? Oh,
so,
cool.
oh yeah. So this, in other words, there you can make fictional films that, because of how you do them, they could still have a huge impact on the political realities of our time. And one of the
Oh,
political
yeah.
realities is the truth embargo is collapsing. And so, and by the way, if the president were to disclose in the next few weeks, which I'm telling you, he could do it at any time now, and I'm happy to go into that, but he could do it at any time. I imagine those films are probably going to do pretty good at the box office. So
Yeah, this is yeah. Oh, it was who was that guy that Ron James? We met the guy at Contact.
that's right.
He said he believes that there's going to be in this upcoming film. It's been written. Steven Spielberg and David Cope co-wrote it. Spielberg's directing. He's got like Ralph Fiennes in it. Well, not. It's got Uma Thurman and a few people like that in it. It's been confirmed. He believes that there's going to be a scene in there which essentially will break the fourth wall. So even though it's a fictional movie, there's going to be a scene and there's going to be some kind of announcement that's actually real. And so everyone who goes to see this movie will see like a really significant major piece of new UFO footage, and the announcement will be that's real. That's what Ron James thought
That's
might happen.
possible. Part of me goes, yeah, that's cool, but I don't like the idea of them toying with this. Right, the idea of sort of toying with it, right? I got to put this out, it's really real or something. What we really wanted was Hollywood's very, very wealthy, powerful people to support the disclosure movement and get this truth embargo done long ago. But I get it, and I'm happy with what's happening, and if the truth, and I expect that the end of the truth embargo is going to put a lot of money in some pockets of people in Hollywood that has been making fictional films about this forever, may make some more, may make some documentaries. So
Yeah.
be it. But I lament the fact that we could have ended this embargo a long time ago, much earlier, if we'd had the support of the people with the power, the money, and the content creation capabilities. But they chose to stay back while we filled the gap. I say we, I mean my colleagues like Ron James and many other filmmakers, Fox. We did the best we could, and they put those docs out. But Hollywood, better late than never.
Exactly. That's. I mean, it's. I'd rather this sort of all ended straight away, which is what my book's about. Basically, the book is about what if it ended earlier than it did. But even it could have ended like in my book. It's Roswell. It's literally in 1947. And then we'd obviously be in a different kind of work. We'd be living very different lives. But I mean, at least it won't last. We know that it's on borrowed time. We know the legacy program can't continue, and that's something and it's going to happen pretty soon, and it has to, because so many people know about it. I mean, my own father, I gave up talking to him about this subject about 20 years ago. He's very set in his ways. He actually just contacted me and said, "What's all this about UFOs I'm seeing in the news?" And I thought, I paused for a moment in shock, because I never expected him to do that. It was really quite amazing.
One of the things that people that are trying to assess the prospects for disclosure, it's worth noting, is that even though there's a whole lot of interest in this subject, and there's content coming out, and there's been all kinds of books written about it, the vast majority of the people on this planet don't really have much of a handle on it. They don't know these things. And there's 8 billion. So what the truth embargo managers need to understand is what's happening out now is starting to bring this issue to millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of people. And they're in a robust way. And so maybe they didn't know about it 6 months ago, but what they're learning now quickly, because of the enormous amount of coverage and media coverage and the film and everything else, is going to be going like, they're going to be going like, we need why didn't we been told about this before? Why are we only learning about this now? And so that is going to be just literally rising as the world really starts to, on a large scale, understand that this is real. Now, they've all seen the fictional films. The fictional films, the sci-fi films with ETs in them, have been seen all over the world on countless billions of times. Views, right? We'll call them views.
Oh, yeah.
So they're fully aware of the fictional ETs and the concept of ET, whether you're living in Bangladesh or Singapore or even, I don't know, Nigeria. They know about that. And so when the real the information about the real extraterrestrial presence starts to come, it's not going to take much time for them to just put those two together and go, whoa, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea that the major governments like the United States, UK, China, Russia are going to be able to continue to go, there's nothing to see here, nothing to see, it's no big deal, it's a misunderstanding, it's a ruse, whatever, is ludicrous. And so the sooner they yield up, but in order to yield, it's got to be a head of state. I don't care how many members of Congress like Tim Burchett go out and say there's ETs here on News Nation or Fox. That's not tripping disclosure. That is not putting us in the next era. It has to be a head of state. And right now, President Trump is right there. Aside from everything else, there's clear evidence that it is in play. People around him are addressing the issue. People in his cabinet, as well as key people in his party in the House, his son, and so forth. It is in play.
Oh yeah, I mean the fact that Marco Rubio specifically, who Trump chose as his Secretary of State, appears in this film, and what he says is extraordinary. Now, there's no way that man could actually have reached that position in government with those opinions if Trump doesn't also know about it. The president has to know about it. His own son, I think it was the day before the inauguration, his own son had interviewed Ross Coulthard.
5 days. 5 days for inauguration, he interviews Coulthard and Elizondo.
Yeah.
So that was January the 15th of this year. That was only a year ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was no accident. You think that he accidentally had scheduled Elizondo and Coulthard to come on for 2 hours on his pretty well viewed podcast, Triggered, by coincidence? No.
Of course not. Yeah.
They were reading the room. They were trying to see what the reaction would be. When Vance goes on the Ruthless podcast, the vice president says he's obsessed with UFOs. That is reading the room, trying to see what the response will be. And then when Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, these are high administrative positions, obviously, goes on another podcast, I think it was Pod Force One, and says that she's looking into it, a serious thing. That's not an accident. And then Vance goes back on another podcast, I think it was a Pod Force One, reiterates his interest again. He's the vice president and happens to mention his very good friend Marco Rubio is also very much interested. And this was before the film came out, right? It was almost like he was promoting the film. And Anna Paulina Luna, probably the member of Congress now most connected to this, who's also in charge of the task force here, declassified government secrets, working on the JFK files with some success, RFK files, and the Epstein files aggressively. Yeah. She goes on Rogan for 2 hours. I mean, Joe Rogan, the evolution of podcasting and the new generations coming up, that you put it all together and you get Joe Rogan. He is a phenomenon. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, he's so much more interesting than any of the mainstream news channels and things like that. I mean, you got to go on there one day, Steve. Surely he's got to invite you on.
Well, I think I did one of his earlier shows a long time ago, 12 years ago. It was like Joe Rogan questions everything. But before I could get back on again, he ascended into the stratosphere, and so now it's like vice presidents, right, secretaries, whatever, a pope. So I think maybe he's moved on. But the point is that he is a force of nature. Now there are other podcasts now. American Alchemy, with Jesse. Michaels, he has also got tremendous show. And they are getting huge views. As I said, an earlier show that Joe Rogan did on this issue with a pretty interesting guest, Bob Lazar. I think it was 5 years ago. 75 million views. So the truth embargo is going to dance around that. They're going to go, no, it's ridiculous. And so this is the new world, the internet, podcast stars, podcasts with more views than CNN would just hope to have. I mean, dream to have, or even the Fox News. It is another world, and it's being driven by pretty much millennials who have, and some Gen Zs who have taken advantage of the fact that the technology is cheap, that the skills involved are not that difficult. And if you're really aggressive, anybody, even a 19-year-old, if you got it, you can have the tech, you can have the studio, you can get the audience, and you can become, and we know about TikTok. People just put up small videos and repeated videos on TikTok, and just because they've got something going, a little catch, the next thing you know, they got 50 million subscribers. They become influencers, right? So this is a different world. And the truth embargo managers, who are just ancient in their thinking still, think that they're going to somehow push that away. They're going to somehow prevent that from getting into their little thing, their game, and ruining it. No, they can't. It's open. And the sooner they realize it and start really cooperating with ending this truth embargo, so the entire world will know we're not alone in this universe. We're not alone in this galaxy. They're almost certainly from other star systems. They have technology. They're engaging us. There seems to be an agenda that could lead to dramatic changes. The sooner the entire world knows that, the better. They need to give it up. And I assure you, we're not going to stop until they do. And the longer they hold on, the more they will be, how would you say, viewed poorly by history.
I think some of them are realizing that now. They must do. And I mean, there are diehards. There are people fighting back. There's the fact that the Schumer Amendment has failed a third year running, which has been obviously that I can't call it a disappointment with developments have happened since then, because obviously a lot has happened in the positive sense as well. But it's pretty clear that there are forces certainly among the congressmen and senators who are who still think that we got to keep this quiet. We can't tell people. We got to just do by any means necessary. We silence this. I
Well,
mean, there are a
it's not
few, aren't there?
quite that. Look, the initial UAP Disclosure Act, about half of it, which was very significant, was passed, and it's been in play for several years now. And there's information being passed over into the through and to the archives. But the full act is essential to being able to uh, responsibly undergo the process in which people are going to learn everything.
Hmm.
ETs, the craft, you name it, right? Psionic research, all the stuff they've been doing, with maybe a few tiny exceptions. We'll see. That act has been, what's more importantly, is not so much that it's failed, it's been reintroduced 3 times in a row, as is, with virtually no changes. So I think the next time, which will be next year, hopefully early, may have a major change, I understand. The Presidential Review Board will be changed to a Congressional Review Board, because that is more palatable to many of the members of Congress in terms of passing it. They would prefer something that is more intrinsically nonpartisan or bipartisan. Fine, no problem. So we will get that act. And also, let's face it, the political situation in the United States is tumultuous, to say the least. It's unprecedented in many ways. It's an effort to keep up with it. It's really strange in some way. And yet this act is still there. It's still being introduced year after year, and other progress is being made. The truth embargo has been running into, for the last 7 years, an extremely substantial headwind in terms of things happening in the U.S. and abroad. And in spite of that, it continues to make more progress than it had in the previous 70 years, which is another message to the embargo managers that it's game over. Get on the side of history. Let's you help us get this done instead of trying to fight it.
Yeah, Danny Sheehan actually said that he didn't believe the NDAA was useless. He believed that it still had teeth. And he's the lawyer, so I respect his opinion on that. And there's every incentive. I mean, we've talked already about Hollywood and the fact that there's a financial incentive for being on our side. And
Now there is, yeah. Now there is.
yeah, and there's a political incentive for being on our side. And
The chances of getting blowback from the U.S. government, the chances of some major producer, whatever, getting somehow hampered by the Department of Defense, or them pulling all their planes and jets and whatever out of any movies that you want to do, I think that's over, right? And they kind of know that. And so now the calculation is, okay, let's be part of history. Let's get on the right side of this, and let's make a lot of money. No problem.
yeah, yeah, it's going to be. I think they could experience a new golden age. That's what I hope will happen. Yeah, definitely. So, does this mean, Steve? It's how soon do you think this is going to happen in terms of like, would it be simply President Trump actually simply standing up and saying, "Yeah, I've been talking to Marco Rubio and other people, and I've decided we're going to talk openly about this, and we're going to release this information." Do you think it'll be like that?
I wouldn't phrase it that way. If they were to consult with me, I'm only 2 blocks from the White House. I'm happy to walk over.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
the, the president needs to do the confirmation. The confirmation is disclosure, capital D. That's what I defined it 20 some years ago. Capital D disclosure is the president of the United States or another head of state of one of the major nations coming forward and saying, yes, we do have non-human technologically advanced presence. We do have that some crash technology. That is confirmation. That is disclosure. That's all they have to say. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to reveal anything. He doesn't have to say, "And I know where the saucers are." No, all he has to do is sit down in the Oval Office at the Resolute desk with one camera on him, maybe one advisor in the room. He doesn't need any press, and simply state quite straightforward that he is following what's been taking place. He has talked with, obviously, his top people in his administration, and can, in fact, confirm that what David Grush told us 3 years ago, well, going on 3 years ago, was true. We have non-human tech, we have non-human bodies, and we are not alone. Hopefully he'll use those words, we are not alone. And that's it. He doesn't have to say anything else. He has already made history at a level that almost no head of state could imagine. And then the rest happens after that. The press release, the press conferences start the next day. The hearings will start pretty soon. The act will probably get passed almost right away, and we will rapidly get into a process of information coming out, that the real information coming out that we need to see, and other nations will follow suit. I expect that if the president makes this announcement, and understand he can do it tomorrow, there is no basic barrier anymore. The only thing that's really missing for him to have the whole full platform would be the full UAP Disclosure Act in place, but that could be passed in a week. So there's no.
This is being prepared as I know Mr. Garcia is actually arranged for a separate bill for with all the text that was missing from the NDAA.
In the House, they're going to submit it in the House. I think Garcia may sponsor it. I think Burleson may lead it. This is the bill we think will have the congressional review panel. But in other words, I'm saying that's all the president has to do. Everything then follows from that. And so my advice would be just do that. It will take 10 minutes. Now, people are going to say, well, no, go on. We need you to talk about this for hours. No. The president's job is not to come out and tell you where the saucers are and what the ETs are like. No. He may not know those details. Or doesn't matter. Does he know there's an ET presence? I think he knows that. I think he may have knew it in his first term. But at this point, he doesn't need to do anything more than that. Now, a lot of people, this is not going to shock you, but a lot of people are going to hear that and go, I don't believe a word he said. I get it. I understand. But I assure you, in a very short time, it could be within 24 hours, but it'll be quick. One or two other major head of states of major countries, allies of us, and possibly even one or two of the living ex-presidents is going to confirm it too. And that is right. Whatever doubts you had, it's over. He is the disclosure president. He will get a Nobel Prize. He will have an extraordinary legacy on his, I guess you could say, resume going forward. Whatever else happens, he will always have that.
Yeah, and he's got that kind of personality. I think he quite likes the idea of being special and being above the others. I think he quite likes that idea, and this would be the perfect opportunity for him too. And I mean, there's also a couple of other things coming up, which I think I wanted to mention because there's anniversaries. Now, I call anniversaries informational choke points, because when an anniversary occurs, that is a decade anniversary, not just every year, obviously. There's extra attention paid towards something, and in this case, we have two major UFO anniversaries coming up. The 60th anniversary of the Kecksburg incident. This is next. That's actually on the 9th, which is next Tuesday. And just in next month and in the new year, we have on the 20th of January, we have the 30th anniversary of the Virginia incident of Brazil. Because these sorts of things, as you just said, we've spoken primarily in American terms this evening, but this is a global phenomenon. And everything we can say for the United States counts for other nations as well. Excuse me. So there will inevitably be a lot of attention pointed towards these events. I don't know if they've organized special conferences or anything else connected to that, but I know that next week I expect a lot of people will gather in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, to mark the anniversary of what happened in December of 1965.
Well, next year is also the 250th anniversary of the United States. It's a big deal.
Quarter of a millennium, yeah. Quarter of a millennium.
Right. And so I'm not suggesting that any disclosure event be postponed until later in the year. The point is that it is a major milestone for the United States. And so if the president were to do what we're suggesting and essentially begin an entire new era, not only for the United States, but for the world, that kind of nicely goes with the 250th anniversary. The United States has a record of doing things first, because of what it is, how it's run, its importance and power and whatever, and it's had breakthroughs. Well, this would be a big one. Does that mean another nation doesn't deserve to be first? No, I'm not saying that at all. And if one of those nations goes first, we have disclosure. But it is worth noting that if another nation goes first, unless it's somehow they set up a joint thing where 3 or 4 nations, including the United States, participate, that person gets the legacy. And our president is second. And second is nothing. You get nothing for that other than, right. Okay. Well, at least you.
I don't think Trump would like. I don't think President Trump would like that. He's not a guy like that.
No, I don't think so.
And it would be fitting, actually, not because it is this major milestone in your country's history. The country which, through the 20th century, essentially led the world in the Cold War, in this bipolar world that we had back then, was the central power of the West, and then, of course, has been the center of the legacy program. I mean, we've actually met the researchers, people like James Fox and his own research into this, and many other people as well, have said that when this major incident took place in Brazil 30 years ago next month, the government basically said, well, we'll get the Americans involved. We always hand these things over to them. And this is Brazil. This is a sovereign state of which the US has no authority. It should have no authority. They said, no, we're going to call the Americans. They always deal with this sort of thing.
So why do you think, Ben, that they did that?
Because the legacy program is centered on the United States and always has been.
Well, but just because the legacy, the legacy, what you're saying is that in the Western world, or the world of democratic republics and whatever, the United States is doing almost all of the research on this issue, the subject, the technology, and everything else. We have the resources, we have the money. And so, in a sense, now that doesn't mean that other countries don't have some sort of programs dealing with this issue in some way or fashion, but they're small compared to the United States. And so they deferred to us. If a crash happens somewhere, they're not going to, some country that's, well, let's just say not in the top 10, they're not going to say, let's get billions and trillions of dollars together, and we're going to create a giant research program to deal with this. No, they're going to turn it over to us. It's common sense, and they're going to remain out of the truth embargo process. I'm sorry, they're going to remain out of the disclosure process, capital D disclosure process, because this issue is not simple. It's not trivial, right? It's almost impossible to describe how big it is, how important it is, the implications. Nothing else in our world. The only thing that even comes close is the implications of our nuclear arms race and the potential for a nuclear war. That's up there. And by the way, when it comes to that, okay, not only do other nations defer to us, we have gone to great lengths to ensure that the number of nuclear nations was as few as possible. And if you want to add your nation to that list, a lot of nasty things can happen. So but this is even bigger than that. All right. But you don't have to use intimidation. So these nations have said, look, if this thing's going to break, it needs to come from hopefully the United States. And then we will then see how it goes and how it's going to affect us. But we do not have the infrastructure and the capability to be a lead nation in dealing with an extraterrestrial presence post-disclosure. Right? No disrespect to the other nations, but the ETs are not going to be putting a lot of emphasis on interacting with Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there are exceptions. I can't imagine, say, Vladimir Putin.
No,
Russia,
China.
Yeah, China as well. Xi Jinping. I don't think they're going to say, "Well, hang, we can't deal with this. We need the Americans' help for this." And they're going to say, "You what?"
No, and it's worse than that. Not worse than that, but bigger than that, in the sense that I think it's accepted, given that China is a pretty big country and has influence over a lot of other countries, and Russia is up until the end of the Soviet Union, it was overwhelmingly the largest I guess you could say nation or republic, right, on the planet. You could fit most of the other nations inside Russia, and so now even after the end of the Cold War, it's still the largest nation by land mass. And a lot of people say, well, a lot of that northern tundra is really not inhabitable. Well, every year that goes by, it's more habitable. It gets warmer. And so the idea that they don't have a crash vehicle, and so it's assumed
they do.
At minimal, Russia China, and the United States, all of which have the technology, the money to address the idea of re-engineering this kind of tech, have been doing it for decades. And one of the things that keeps being brought up by some of these people that are coming forward now, like Rubio and others, is the speculation, which may be true, that there is an ET technology weaponization what am I looking for? Race, an ET technological arms race going on where we're trying to find how to weaponize this tech. I hope it's not true, but it may be. And if it is true, the sooner we get disclosure so that can be addressed, hopefully responsibly with some discussions, sit down, big tables, some agreements, treaties, whatever the hell, the better. Because ET tech takes the arms race to another level of paranoia that few of our fine leaders are going to be able to withstand. And what do I mean by that? ET tech ultimately is the first strike weapon. It is the ultimate first strike weapon. What do I mean? We know how these craft work. We know how they operate. We know how fast they are. We know it's almost instantaneous, which means that a fleet of ET craft based on ET tech could deliver 50 nuclear weapons over cities of another country before they even had a chance to get the codes out.
Yeah, commonly also the Strategic Defense Initiative right now is based around ballistic missiles, which essentially are rockets similar to the space rockets. But they're now. I mean, if this is true, then these things are obsolete.
Well, it's more than that. It's not that they're obsolete. It means the new tech is an absolute first strike weapon. Now, if you've got three major nations that are realizing that they're all developing what amounts to absolute first strike weapons, meaning if they go first, you're screwed and you're going to have to catch up after that, right? Yeah. That level of paranoia is excruciating. It means every day that people in the know that understand that this ET tech, particularly anti-gravitics, is being developed, possibly weaponized by at least two of our I guess you say adversaries, they are living with the fact that any time they could first strike, and so the constant pressure on these defense these countries, strike first. Yeah. Don't let them do it. Strike first. Be first. Yeah. This is where we're getting maybe already there, and how long is that going to? How long? In other words, if something really happens. Well, let me go further. There's a lot of movies coming out that are trying to draw our attention to the fact that we're still dancing on the edge of nuclear destruction. And so don't plan ahead. All right. The most recent one is The House of Dynamite, which is Catherine Bigelow's gift to the world about, no, I just needed to make another movie. I hope it makes some money. No, this was a message from her to the world. Right. And The House of Dynamite goes through there's some, I think there's some flaws, but overall it goes through what amounts to a single event, the launch of a single weapon, of a missile, but most likely with nuclear warhead, for reasons not clear, and so forth. And it goes through the whole process of how they're having to deal with that. In other words, and the time frame is not that long, but they keep showing versions of it. It's a very powerful movie. A lot of people didn't like the ending. Screw that, right? It's an incredibly important movie. And so you go through and you see all of the things that has to happen until you get to the point where the president can make a decision. Understand that with ET anti-gravitic tech, that wouldn't happen. They wouldn't even see the craft coming in with the nuke that's going to take out Washington so that it cuts the head off the snake. That movie would be a short movie.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, we know. I mean, if you ever read the books, for example, by Philip Mantle and Paul Stonehill, you'll know that during the Cold War, the other side had its own versions of Roswell, certainly. And in fact, some of the most interesting UFO and ET crash retrieval events ever in history have actually happened behind the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union. And what they, as the US, this can be back engineered. This is studied, back engineered, and could be weaponized. And we now have like a space force. and other countries are setting up their own space force. I mean, France has got one up. France has got one. Israel's got one. And there's talk about control of cislunar space and things like that. Catherine Austin Fitts was talking about a cislunar space, big weapons on the moon and things like this. So yeah, I mean, it's we are in a precarious world, and the question is secrecy helping it or not? I mean, if nuclear weapons had not been used at the end of World War II, so for example, if Japan had capitulated 6 months before August 45, when the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings happened, would the US government have declassified the Manhattan Project? Because they may have decided just to continue operating secret. They already knew the Soviet spies were getting hold of it anyway. You know?
Well, even if they had chosen not to drop the bombs, the Soviets knew about the Manhattan Project. They knew about the atomic and hydrogen bomb tech. So that wouldn't have worked. But if they had not dropped the bombs on Japan, somehow managed to not do that, and not become the first nation to use nuclear weapons to annihilate a couple 100,000 people, mostly non-combatants, it might have been a little easier to discuss detente with the Soviet Union, because they were the ally against the Nazis, and they suffered far more losses than we did, and so we should have been friends after the war. However, the Soviet Union still has its issues with the West. And so as Stalin is looking out and seeing that the U.S. was the first to make these bombs, that obviously they didn't get in touch with Stalin and say, look, we're working on these bombs to help end the war, right? Just want you to know. And we actually used them and obliterated, vaporized a whole lot of Japanese people. His concern that, well, that's a little disturbing. And so his willingness to maybe get some sort of a different alliance and not end up in a nuclear arms race with us was gone. And so that's one of the most fateful decisions that humans have ever made, period, the dropping of those two bombs. And I wish we could get some really good films, deep documentaries about it with big money behind them to go in and really look at everything that happened in those last years of the war, particularly with Truman administration and everything else, right? And all this is before Roswell, okay? Though might have had that if there was a magenta crash in Italy, might have had, if there was, and we might have gotten that crap prior to 45. I don't know. I don't know if it would have made a difference, but the decision that was made was incredibly significant. Untold trillions and trillions of dollars, hundreds of trillions of dollars, adjusted for inflation, have been spent, I believe, that might have been avoided, spent on military and all the other stuff, if we had not done that. And that money would have been available to make lives better for Soviet citizens, Russian citizens, the United States, China. We'd have had a lot of money to make better lives and protect ourselves and our environment. Instead, we spent it on endless war, endless tech development to build weapons, and created the nuclear arms race, mutual assured destruction, 80 years of a colossal, I don't know how to describe it, mistake, snafu, whatever, but there's no bigger decision. Now, the decision to end the truth embargo, I believe, is at the level of that decision, maybe even more important than using the nukes, the decision by Truman to use the nukes. Now, the next decision may be even more important, and the question is which president, which head of state is going to make that decision, because ending the truth embargo is not a ticket to more destruction, waste. It is probably a ticket to a new world in which things that are absolutely impossible now become possible. That is a big deal, and that is what is sitting on the desk right now of the President of the United States.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very important historical moment. And, I've actually read The Fascist UFO Files by Roberto Panotti. And this is, I think, is the best document about the Magenta crash of 1932 or whenever it was. I think it's 1932.
What did the document say? Did they give any indication of when, if and when that craft was delivered to the United States?
It's actually on. It's not like, it's like a pamphlet more than a book that Roberto wrote. And it talks about the division that the Mussolini regime set up specifically to investigate UFOs on that level, and it was the first one in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's like some original documents and things like that. I mean, I know a lot of this is a controversial issue because some people say it was all made up, but having, you know, I've met Roberto. He spoke at a conference here in the UK. Read the pamphlet. You can get it online. It's free, and there's some original documents, including pictures of the object, things like that, descriptions, and also the connection to the Vatican and how the Vatican then basically organized the whole thing. There was a kind of broker the whole thing, but then the Americans, of course, got involved, as David Grush has talked about, and of course, once that happens, I mean, have you heard of the Venona decrypts?
No.
Oh, this is a series of messages that were sent between basically the Soviet Union contacting its various spies in embassies around the world, and only a handful have ever been decoded. But it proves that the Soviet foreign intelligence effort in the Cold War was extraordinarily successful, and this includes the ability of the Soviet Union partly built its own nuclear weapons program on. It partly built its own nuclear weapons program on information that spies had delivered to the country from inside the Manhattan Project and subsequent nuclear weapons development programs. And of course, there's no reason to think that this won't also happen with ET crash retrieval research and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think a lot of people maybe don't get about the last 80 years is that the principal reason everybody had to spy on each other was not getting an edge that they could then use to like take us out so much, is that, and this is ironic. In other words, the whole spying programs, particularly of the Soviet Union, Russia, and the United States, there are other, and obviously China to some degree. The reason they saw it so important, and in fact, if you really were to sit down with some of these spy masters, some of the managers of this, and really probe, they would say they had to spy on us, and we had to spy on them. Because if somehow these three major nations had the ability to literally prevent any intrusions, any spying from these, quote, adversaries, that everybody would have been in the dark all the time. They wouldn't have known what's going on. And the paranoia and the fear of just grown and grown and grown. They could hit us at any time. But because of all the spying, they had a pretty good idea of what each other were doing. And so that gave them a little more assurance of where things were and what the risks were, and made it a little easier to get through the day without pushing a button. Okay? So, but because of the nature of things, sure, we needed you to spy on us, literally, and we needed to spy on you. But if you catch one of our spies, yeah, you may kill him, and we may do the same thing, right? Because we can't tell the people that spying is a good thing, and we want to keep it within a certain limits. But I think one of the reasons that you see over these decades, all these situations where they do the exchanges, right? We're exchanging our spies for your spies.
Yeah,
because fundamentally, we couldn't have made it to now without all the spying. The spying was the way they kept in touch with what their enemies were doing, so they could know whether they needed to do something dramatic or not. And by having that knowledge, they were able to stay in a level of comfort, which prevented them from making that fatal mistake. And that is another thing. I mean, what a hell of a way to operate a world. My God, right? I mean,
yeah.
But that's what we've done. Now, whether that'll change post-disclosure, I don't know.
I don't know. But one thing I do know, like when disclosure happens, supposing it is President Trump who does disclosure, don't expect Vladimir Putin to go, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Or Xi Jinping. They know this because of this structure that Steve and I have described. They know exactly what each one is doing. They all know what the other guy is doing, and indeed, James Fox has actually made a documentary. He hasn't actually produced it yet, and it's not been edited or post-produced yet. But he made a documentary about China, which I know he wants to bring out at some point. But he did film a documentary about China. and
I
about
hope
how much what
I
they
hope
know.
somebody will step forward and give him money. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
our country right now is overrun with billionaires. I think you probably know that, right?
Mm.
I mean, we got 20-year-old billionaires. We got, I think we got billionaire dogs, right? That inherited it, whatever. The point is, we're
Yeah.
well, and they're spending money on all kinds of stuff. So the idea that somebody that understood how important this is to give James Fox $30 million and say, let's make 6 incredible docs. Why not?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but, and this is what I want to see. I want to see the people that are in this field that have done all they work for decades to get the funds to take it to another level and not just be pushed aside by the people that just finally figured it out and go, yeah, well, okay, yeah, but we're going to use our people or whatever. We don't need you. I mean, this is ridiculous. And this is we're right at the cusp on that. In fact, there's not too much I can do. I'm a limited nonprofit. I don't have a lot of money. It's not like I can start some massive program at I'm almost 80. It's going to have a big difference. This is a younger person's game now. But what I'm looking to do, if I get some funding, is the X conference would be, there's, I don't know if you see that back there, but that's the old X conference poster.
Right,
The X conference could be a way, but there's other ways that I can help make sure that the people that have done all this work during the truth embargo get recognized, get included where possible. They don't get just pushed aside. Appreciated, even if it's just appreciation from the general public. The truth embargo managers would prefer we just all go away because we just remind them of, we've been lying all these years. You keep pointing it out. We just go away now, and now the truth is out. No, so that's going to be the focus, I think, of my work going forward, particularly post disclosure.
Well, this is your ultimate vindication. It really, really is, definitely, and yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. And as far as the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance goes, I hope Dan Farrow will join it, because if he joins it, then probably Steven Spielberg will join it, and then
that would be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But again, this is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is exactly what I just talked about. Dan Harari and I put it together 2 years ago. Now it has 250 members, half Hollywood film people, half UAP people, right?
That's me. I'm one of them, and I'm glad.
Yeah, you're in it. And there have been deals made and so forth. And this is all about helping the people that did all this heavy work for decades be included in the renaissance of this issue in Hollywood. Okay, and it's making progress. Now, there's a whole lot of A-listers we'd love to have in. We do have one very important Hollywood celebrity, and that's Shirley MacLaine, God bless her. And she's a member, all right? We're trying to get a second Oscar winner. We're still working on him, but I think we'll eventually get him. But I think it's going to happen. Now, guess what? We just got a new member who is a pretty well-known fellow, right? Who really is into this issue. And so pretty soon, as my understanding is, Willie Nelson is going to go up on the HTA site as I think a Hollywood founding member of the HTA.
That's excellent, because he was interviewed by Darcy Weir, and he did a really interesting interview.
That's right.
That's fantastic. I'm glad he's joined. Well done, Darcy. I mean, I imagine Darcy probably had a word with him. So,
and
well
by
done,
the way, he's 92, and he's in the middle of a 30-city tour with Bob Dylan. I mean, is it the weed? I mean, was it the weed? I mean, should I take that up? I mean, I've never smoked weed, but maybe I need to think about it. Anyway, he's
just so you may be nearly 80, Steve, but you could have a big future ahead of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could maybe. Well, say future, no, but I wouldn't mind exploring some of these areas, but we'll see. And for now, I'm focused on one thing, and that's disclosure. But Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is an example of that. There's going to be more of that. This is an incredibly wealthy country that has been wealthy the entire 80 years and is now wealthy beyond. And I say wealthy, I mean wealthy in the total sense. Does that mean everybody's wealthy? No. Does that mean that the distribution of wealth is optimal? Not even close. I'm just saying there's an enormous amount of wealthy people who do they do a lot of good. There's huge amounts of donations and charity and whatever else and support of development programs in this country. Good. But not this issue. So if some of those really wealthy people begin to realize that they will live to see probably the most important event in human history take place, which is disclosure. and that there is an enormous amount of work to do, and a whole lot of really great people that have been working on this for decades and decades, some 40, 50 years, and they would decide to invest in that and help them do even more, that would be nice.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting that out there, right? I mean, the kind of money that would allow James Fox and Ron James and others to really go to a whole nother level is practically nothing in the stream of donations and charity and so forth that they invest money in. I mean, it's nothing, but it would be significant. We need a full public engagement of this issue, and it certainly needs to include all the people that have invested a significant, if not their entire life, in trying to educate the world about a subject when their government said there is no subject, and you're crazy to even bother to do it. So it would be nice if there was a reset, a rebalance on that, and everybody, these people had the kind of funds that would allow them not only to do even more work, but also to maybe have a little more comfortable life as they approach the end, as it were.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, I mean, I'm really excited by all this. I really, really am. And I can't wait to see what happens, Steve. I mean, I hope you'll come back. I mean, I'd love to talk to you again when there's a development, because there will be. I mean, often I think to myself, is this stagnating? Is it stagnating? And then something happens. And the idea of any stagnation is now completely gone. I mean, there's too many forces acting in this arena now ever for this to stagnate again. And so I really appreciate you talking to me, Steve. I really do. And
always
you're very, very welcome. And let the viewers know how to find out more about you. Your
a couple of things. One, if we get disclosure, I'm really looking forward to coming to the UK and talking. I really enjoyed my time there and speaking. I love the people. I love London. So, and we got a few things to say. Paradigm Research Group, for those who don't know, converted to a nonprofit 501c3. So it's Paradigm Research Group, Inc. So tax deductions from American citizens are now available. Meanwhile, other things are happening. The New Paradigm Institute is leading in terms of raw activism. It's created the Citizens for Disclosure movement. It's got a number of programs. And so if you want to really get involved in the citizen activism, New Paradigm Institute is where you want to go, newparadigminstitute.org. There are a number of things that are happening that are breakthrough. We have a scientific report out from the Nordic Institute of Astrophysics, and the project is chaired by Beatrice Villarreal.
Oh, that's the objects in the sky that were around in the 50s.
It's been peer reviewed, and if it holds up, it's a slam dunk confirmation that we're not alone.
Yeah, it's just been published. Actually, I wrote about it. It's been
published, and there's more, and that's a big deal. Okay, there's a breakthrough in the matter of telepathy, which is now part of a larger group called psionics. Telepathy, I think, is about to be established publicly and peer-reviewed and confirmed as real, right? Which is huge. That's happening. Yeah. And then there's other conferences coming together and so forth. There's a lot of anticipation of the extraordinary things that are coming. And one of those conferences is the State of the World Forum, which is available to everybody. It's a worldwide online event that is the rebirth of the State of the World Forum of the 1990s that were put on by Gorbachev and Jim Garrison, who is the president of the Gorbachev Foundation and the State of the World Forum Forum. And they held 6 of them. They were huge events, heads of state, some top scientists addressing the world after the end of the Soviet Union to rethink how we can go forward, right? And there was a lot of optimism in it. People were really excited. The Berlin Wall has come down. The nuclear arms race may come down. We may have a future. And they had 6 of those. And then, of course, it all came back. They started a new Cold War, whatever else. Now, that was 30 years ago. Now, Jim Garrison's still here. Gorbachev is gone. But he's decided to bring back the State of the World Forum, 6 of them starting next month and running through 2030. And it's along the same line. Very high-level people of great intellect from a diverse area are going to come together to discuss the state of the world and where things are going. Only this time around, unlike 1990s, two of the major topics are artificial intelligence, extraterrestrial intelligence, okay, the new frontiers of human intelligence, right, as well as the natural intelligence of this world. That is the way they're approaching it. 51 panelists over 3 days discussing all of these things. It's online. There are already 35 watch parties that are created. You can create a watch party in about 10 different countries. There'll be more of those. And so, what can I say? It's online. It's easy to participate in, and also I am a sponsor, and so I can provide a code to anybody that's interested that would save a lot of money on their registration.
Oh,
right?
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah,
the watch party information is right up on the site, State of the World Forum, or well, actually it's stateoftheworld.forum, but Google State of the World Forum, and you get it. You can see all this information. It's a significant event, and it is worldwide. And of course, it's leading to more things. This is the kind of stuff that's being put together now because more and more people are starting to realize that the age of the post-disclosure world, not just the age of we're in the age of disclosure, but the age of the post-disclosure world is next. It's coming, and people should start getting excited. So I recommend considering being part of the State of the World Forum and watching it, sharing it, create a watch party. And again, I have a promotional code that I can provide anybody that reaches out to me by email or phone or text, and I can send it to them for a substantial reduction.
Oh, that's great, Steve. I've actually got Danny Sheehan's newsletter mentioned the State of the World Forum, and it looks really, really good. And it's worth subscribing to his newsletter as well as Steve's.
Of course.
So that's fantastic, man. That's brilliant. And so, yeah, people get ready. I think that's the catchphrase, isn't it?
People get ready.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Steve. I appreciate you talking to me. Thanks for taking part in this Age of Disclosure watch party on Hapanmo TV, and of course being on Hapanmo Radio as well. So take care of yourself.
Always, man. You're always. I'm always there for you, man. You've been doing the work for a long time. You've helped educate the British people, and I hope they'll appreciate that.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, I've certainly enjoyed it. Definitely. Thanks, Steve.
Till next time.
And thank you very much, Stephen Bassett, for that. That was a really, really interesting discussion I had with him about this amazing film. And of course, this is like the big movie, I think. I agree with him. And let's just see what the critics have to say. Let's just look at that, shall we? Oh, yeah, you got to look at them critics. So let's begin with, funnily enough, The Skeptic magazine. Yes. Now, this is interesting. This is by Michael Shermer, who, as you know, has done several debates with people about this particular subject, including Avi Loeb recently. But you may have seen some previous videos I made about Shermer indicating that he's kind of wavering a little bit when it comes to the whole skeptic scenario, I find. It's very, very interesting indeed. I've done some films about that. But anyway, this is from Skeptic magazine. This is not to be confused with the Skeptic UK magazine, which I actually have subscribed to. And it says here, what's Michael? Should I do a Michael Shermer voice? Or should I just do a skeptic voice? I'll do a skeptic voice. The aliens are here, brackets, again. A review of the Age of Disclosure. I better show it to you, hadn't I? Here we go again. Another documentary film about disclosure of alien contact is imminent. It's a claim I've been hearing for over 3 decades. Well, let's face it. To be fair to Michael Shermer, this actually goes back about 8 decades. But anyway, he's not that old. Albeit this one is of a higher quality than the dozens of similar such docs available on Amazon Prime and hundreds more on YouTube. With the Age of Disclosure, filmmaker Dan Farrar, who was best known for, as I said to Steve, Ready Player One and a couple of other interesting films, has lifted the genre to a higher level than others, James Fox being the exception with The Phenomenon. Credit shared with Farrar, well worth watching. All right, it mentions The Phenomenon. I didn't know that Dan Farrar actually worked with James Fox as well. That's right. I was tempted to offer a snarky, I watched it so you don't have to. But if you're relatively new to the UFO/UAP topic, I recommend investing the $20 Amazon Prime charge to rent the film for 30 days, $25 to buy it. The artfully edited trailer hints at what is to come in the film. Okay. The Age of Disclosure is packaged and produced so well that naive viewers, may come away thinking that something strikingly original, shockingly new, and world-shaking is about to be loosed among the world. Alas, it is not to be. Every fact, opinion, or anecdote of the film has been rehearsed elsewhere in recent years, and a good deal of the footage is from the congressional hearings, media reports, and stock interviews that have been circulating for years on CNN, Fox News, NewsNation, even the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, along with other mainstream media sources and large audience podcasts. Okay. I think Michael may have missed the point here. As I've been discussing with Steve, it's not the actual content of the film really significant here. It's the profile of the film and the level at which it is being released and viewed. But then he goes on to say, I'm not going to read all of this, but he goes on to, blurry photos, leaves, and then the usual thing here. We're not alone in the universe. Humans are not the only. They're real. They're here. Non-human intelligence. Blah, blah, blah. The biggest discovery. Wow, can we see these aliens in their spaceships? Nope. Why not? Why not, Michael? Well, the reason is why not is because of the legacy program, because of the truth embargo. I mean, they actually explain in the film why not. I mean, he's obviously, even though Michael Shermer is kind of like wavering on, he's sort of like faltering in his dogged stroll down Skeptic Avenue. He hasn't quite turned around yet and gone back the other way to woo-woo close. Even though if you look at the videos I've made about Shermer in the last few years, it's pretty clear he is having his doubts. But anyway, it's again, he just mentions Lou Elizondo, and it's again, it's a fair criticism really, which is that we still only have anecdote. We have anecdotes. We have witness testimony. Elizondo says, if you could be in my shoes and seen what I've seen, there'd be zero doubt. The problem is we can't be in everyone else's shoes, so we depend on evidence that does not depend on a single eyewitness. If only you could have been in my shoes that night when I saw Bigfoot. Yeah, the thing about this is, okay, there's no physical evidence of body of Bigfoot, so why should we believe the person who said, I saw Bigfoot? That's an understandable criticism. But should we automatically disbelieve the person who says that? Do you see what I mean? Let's just see. What scientists and skeptics are asking for the UFO and UAP community is to, at long last, show us the evidence. Honestly, there's nothing I'd like better. There's nothing I'd like better than that. I've asked that question myself. But with the legacy program, it's not possible. And you may say, well, that's convenient. It's a legacy program, which there's no evidence because of the legacy program. How do you know the legacy program exists? Because there's no evidence. Circular argument, but no. And that, by the way, is not something Michael has written here. But the truth of the matter is, there's other evidence for considering that this may be a part of the there's another reason for this, and of course here we have Bill Maher. Now this is Bill Maher, the TV presenter who interviewed Dan Farrow. Lots of other people have as well. This is getting more and more higher profile, and so really, Michael, what's more likely, that all of physics and aerodynamics need revising, or someone has misinterpreted low-resolution video? You see, this is not new. Again, Michael. I won't read all this, all right, because I don't want to go for this. It's a 15-minute read, but Michael Shermer also is not saying anything original here. His skeptic arguments are also very cliche. But anyway, that is interesting that the skeptics themselves have reviewed it. I actually just Googled the Age of Disclosure review, and I got that, one of the first hits. Now let's go on, of course, to the Garidian. Now this review actually came out by someone who was actually at the premiere at South by Southwest, and it says here, 80 years of lies and deception. Is this the final proof of alien life on Earth? And it says a splashing new documentary that asserts the presence of extraterrestrial life on Earth and alleges a US government effort to hide information on possible alien activity done by evil white men, of course, is making waves at the South by Southwest Film Festival. The age of disclosure, it goes on. There's a few details here. How many stars did this person? This is Adrian Horton, who looks. Is that he or she? Looks like it's got a boy's name anyway. A bipartisan group of officials, blah 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 blah. Hollywood reporter Daniel Feinberg dismissed it as a basic cable exploitation done dock up with fancy gloss, which nothing is proven and nothing can be refuted. Well, that's what this person said. What do you say, Adrian, Mr. or Mrs. Adrian Horton? But it is still the most serious and sourced documentary on the government's handling of the UAP information to date, surveying years of growing public interest in the subject as it proclaims, in Elizondo's words, the greatest paradigm shift in human history. The Age of Disclosure is the most historic documentary ever made on this topic, says Jay Stratton. And it's just a few quotes here. Let's have a look. I want to know what this person actually thinks. There's Dan. That's Dan Farrer. Yeah. Provocative and controversial as the claims are, the filmmakers left the question of next steps to the audience with an explicit call to demand more information from lawmakers. They say are also kept in the dark. Push your representatives, push the executive branch, push the president to make this come to light. Make transparency happen so the world can be undone. Oh, right. So that was the Garidian. To be honest, that's actually not that bad. You know, the Guardian's usually not too bad. Actually, the Guardian's usually worse than that. Anyways, finally, let's go to see the local news of where the release was. Let's go here. Obviously, I'll do Rotten Tomatoes in a minute, but this is from the Austin Chronicle, which is where I believe the festival is based in Texas. This is by Richard Whitaker. I sound like someone from Texas. New documentary probes the changing government position on UFOs. How do people from Texas talk? Okay. It's been said there are two kinds of people: those that believe in UFOs and those that don't. There's a third kind of people who don't have to believe in UFOs because they know they're real. Solid evidence about extraterrestrial, subterrestrial, subaquatic, or transdimensional visitors to the tiny sliver of Earth we humans occupy has been in scant supply. I hope that's correct. Sorry, any Texan viewers, if I'm butchering your accent. According to the age of disclosure, that's not by accident or because there's none to be found, but because of deliberate and determined efforts to procure and hide the evidence. That's right, isn't it? For any ufologists or Gen Xers who put the X into the X-Files, it's not exactly a huge revelation. However, what the age of disclosure has, the average alien encounter documentary doesn't, is that rather than a bunch of hicks who saw something on the country road, he's a bit of self-deprecation there from Texas, their witnesses have greater gravitas. And he goes on to, he talks about, for doubters, this is the level of witnesses they've demanded for years. So they're basically saying this kind of fulfills a criteria. This is like a bar that has been crossed, and this person is not raising the bar. Is that right? Because for doubters, you see, this indicates that this person is actually, his name is Richard Whitaker, maybe open to this idea. He talks about Elizondo. The age of disclosure is a little oddly toned for anyone who followed the 2023 congressional hearings, before which several of Farrer's talking heads appeared, and will know most of this anyway. A lot of people may file it as odd but interesting and forget that high-ranking military officials testify on screen and before lawmakers that U.S. forces have recovered non-human biologics from bodies from crash sites. If these wheels within wheels machinations sound like the stuff of conspiracy theories, well, sometimes that's just how the world works. My goodness me, this guy is a spirit, just is a kindred spirit. And it goes on a little bit more here. But Farah and Elizondo aren't necessarily interested in convincing audiences that they're right about UAP, as they are about highlighting the change in government attitudes. It's not that they've known about these incursions, but unknown entities for decades. It's because they've known for that about as long. Yes, that's a good point. It's the political side of this that's important. It's not the existence of the aliens as such. It's the fact that we've been lied to for so long, and there's no real. I don't think there's any spin they can actually shed on us, which would actually make them coming out looking good. I mean, governments are very, very good at framing issues to make them look good, no matter what the issue is. If they do something bad, they'll get some spin doctor in to like present it to the public to make it. No, we're doing good here. It's good, really. You think it's bad, but it's good. And we acted in your best interest. How are they going to pull that off this time? I've made this point many times. How on earth are they possibly going to describe this situation in that way this time? It's that they're finally admitting what we've known all along, and they and we really need to keep watching the skies. Yes, but it's about lies on the ground as well as watching the skies. That's really interesting. That's very interesting. Just little review there. And now finally, of course, you've got to go to them. Rotten Tomatoes. Now this is very interesting here. This is Rotten Tomatoes. Now this is the review of reviews, the aggregator. Now this is interesting, isn't it? Look at this. The Tomatometer, 30%. Popcorn meter, 93%. Right. So this is this bit here is this is the critics, and this here is the audience rating. So the audience rating, as you can see, far outstrips the critics' reviews. And now this is what is conventionally known in cinematic circles as defying the critics. And I don't like that phrase. I hate that phrase, actually. In fact, I did this article. I mean, I know I keep referring back to articles I've done before, but this is an important one if I could find it, because if you want to check this out, here we go. This is an article here. I won't read it out, but you can make this. This is the point I want to make. Is basically summed up in this article here. Okay, the critics on Hapanmo Voice. There's the URL. The critics don't have any authority over us. Right? The critics aren't our bosses. They can't tell us what to think. They can't tell us what to do. They can't tell us to like the films they like and dislike the films they dislike. But there's this sense that they somehow can. There's this sense that they do have some kind of authority, and they have some kind of dominion over our minds. And in fact, I've had people have a go at me even for suggesting this, that they don't have dominion over our minds. Clearly, they think they do. And so there's this absurd phrase, defying the critics. Well, maybe it's just disagreeing with the critics. And in this case, with the age of disclosure, you can see quite clearly that the audience have been lapping this up. 93% is very, very high. 30% is very low. The critics are slamming it, apart from a couple of the ones I've read. The audience love it. So the critics are clearly out of touch with the cinematic public. Maybe they're the ones being defiant, not us. Anyway, I don't. This is one of the reasons I never ever read a review of anything, a book or a film, before I read it or watched it. Never. Because I know people who do. I know people who won't go and see a movie unless it's had raving reviews from the Independent or the BBC say it's a must-watch. Why? Don't let them do your thinking for you. Think for yourself. Make your own mind up, guys. So I don't give a damn what the critics think. I mean, I'm pleased that the audience has outstripped them. So that's a very radical difference in opinion, definitely, between the professional critics and the moviegoers. I'm not sure what the difference is, quite frankly, but that's still encouraging. Right, so that I think concludes this review of this review part of this watch party. This is the review segment, the second of 3 videos I'm making about the age of disclosure. And this represents the end of the review segment. The next step is the live stream, and that'll be coming up in the next few days. So keep your eye on the channel. I'll put up a notice, as always, for live streams, and then we can discuss it. And please, if you haven't watched The Age of Disclosure, go and watch it now. Because I'm not going to insist you do that. It's up to you. But you'll get a lot more out of the live stream if you do that. You really, really will. So keep your eye on that. There's more videos coming as well. I'll finally get the Lapis one done. And I've got other ideas for videos too. So thank you, all of you, for watching Hapanmo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.